I'm at it again, breaking down yet another team's finish. Today, I will be breaking down the Pittsburgh Pirates on today's action packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source for fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Matthew Ane. You can find me on X, Twitter, whatever you call it, at Matthew_Ane. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the bell below to subscribe to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. Also, too, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you may listen. And if you want a little bit more than what we offer in this 30-minute podcast, check us out on Subtext and become a member of the Diamond Club. Get a little bit more insight, get, our rankings and all this off-season stuff that you're going to want to get in early and, have all throughout the off-season to prep for next year. 2025 is around the corner. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And all right, we got a good episode for you today. We're going to be covering the Pittsburgh Pirates, and quite honestly, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad going on with this team, and quite honestly, we're going to have to cover it all. There's some huge disappointments, guys we paid up for, and guys that, if you stashed for a good chunk of time or you bought the dip, you made out like a bandit, and we'll cover that. We'll cover, what this team did well, what this team didn't do well. I'm pretty excited to talk about them, even though they're not the most exciting team. Now, here's the deal. I'm still in Japan, so don't mind the background. This is my last day, so, normal stuff back, and you'll get at least one episode with Dom and I together. So we'll hit this. But let's get into it, right? Pittsburgh Pirates finished about 76 wins and 86 losses. Not a bad season, almost 500. I think they could have had it if, some injuries didn't happen. Also, if they had Paul Skenes all year, and if David Bednar can, be better as well. And if Cruz would have stepped up, things like that. They had a lot of things go wrong. A lot of guys bust this year, and then some bright spots. And, it's just an up and down season for them. And, I think better times to come. And we'll get into that now. We'll start talking about the biggest disappointment. That's Cruz. He was being drafted in the 3rd round, which I was doing it everywhere. I advised you guys to do it everywhere. And quite honestly, I didn't see this coming. He started off, not great, still didn't finish off great, even though he had a fantastic spring. And the numbers are just underwhelming on the season, right? 541 at bats, 72 runs, 34 doubles, 3 triples, 21 bombs, 76 ribs, 22 stolen bases, 51 walks to 181 strikeouts, batted .259. Now, we take a look at just like him as a whole, and we're just like, is this really real? Well, I look at like his minor league stats. Now, yes, it's only through 271 at bats, but, he had a way better walk to strikeout ratio, like 28 walks to 69 strikeouts, batted .310. A year before that, 24 to 74. And was batting .298. Like, he is one of those guys that could probably strike out about 30% of the time, and ultimately, bat .270, .280. But he hasn't shown it yet, and this year was quite disappointing. Not only in the batting average category, which I think he would have been like a .270, .275 hitter, which I think is going to be his standard floor. But the power wasn't really there with, only 21 home runs. The stolen bases are decent. I would have expected a little bit more. And let's just get into it too. Like, nothing screams like, hey, why he didn't do well except for maybe the launch angle sweet spot. Like, he was only getting that about 32% of the time. It really wasn't like, something that how do I put this? Like, if it was just a hair better, he probably would have gotten it over the fence probably a little bit more. So a little bit adjustment in the swing can probably get that ball over the fence a little bit more. And then we can see that 30-40 home run upside that I think he has. Cruz is an absolute stud. Like, his average exit velocity this year was 95.5 miles an hour. Super elite, really up there with the top tier guys. He was barreling about 15% of the time. That's 97th percentile. Hard hit contact. So how often he made hard contact and the percentage was 54% of the time. His ex-WOBA was 342. His ex-batting average was 266. His ex-slug was 472. You look at all these stats and you're like, wow, so like, why didn't it, align with the stat sheet, right? Like, why didn't we see more home runs? Well, obviously, I spoke about the sweet spot, launch angle sweet spot. I also, you know, things just also don't go your way. Like it's a matter of, one split second can also make it. So maybe he just got a little unlucky this year. But also too, like some underlining stats kind of also do it with like how often he was chasing, which was pretty often, about 31% of the time. He was whiffing at 34.1% of the time. And he was striking out 30.2% of the time. And was only walking at 8.5% of the time. So you look at all that, and that's a culmination for bad batting average and power being dipped because you're not putting the bat to the ball as often. So, hopefully next year we can turn it around, figure it out. Maybe we can be a little bit more patient behind the plate. And I think O'Neal Cruz is set up to be success. At least we won't be paying a third round premium for him. Probably more like a fifth, maybe a fourth by probably draft season, depending on how much hype he's getting from his spring. If he's having a monstrous spring, I guarantee he creeps up into the fourth round. Well, I think end of the fourth, and then fifth round is pretty fair price, which I think is where he's going to end up landing. And we'll get a good return on him next year. I look at it and I'm just hoping the team takes a step forward. I hope they call it like guys like Tamar Johnson. I hope other guys that we talk about on the show kind of step up, and kind of be able to give him more of runs and ribs kind of production to, help out with that. Brian Reynolds was a revelation this year and was fantastic. I think he had an overall good season, and, it wasn't enough to really bring home all the counting stats that we'd like to see out of O'Neal Cruz. We need other bats to step up, and there's really not that many on. I think it's honestly just O'Neal Cruz and Brian Reynolds and De La Cruz. But like he was like a meh ad for me. I don't think he's going to be this serious. Going to be the reason why runs and ribs are up next season. Truthfully, they need to bring in somebody, or they need to call up a couple guys too, because they do have a loaded farm system, and if I remember correctly. But let's talk about the other great player on this team. That's Brian Reynolds, at least on the bat side, right? Brian Reynolds, was being drafted, I think, undervalued, truthfully, for what the season production was overall. But I think ultimately because of the runs and ribs, it kind of hampered it, even though the ribby numbers were a little bit better. I wish we could have saw this out of O'Neal Cruz. It would have made it just a little bit sweeter. But, he had a really slow start, which I think if he would have had a consistency throughout the whole season, it probably would have been a little bit more, like the season would have been a lot more impressive. Let's put it that way, right? Like we would have looked and been like, okay, I could totally see how this panned out, how we got here, things like that. But, anyway, you look at his first half, or better yet, you look at let's put it this way. Yeah, the first half, right? He batted about 284, 18 home runs, 61 ribs, was really going off on a tear. Then May kind of hit and he was kind of teeter off. You saw him out there on some waivers, things like that, except in 14 mans and 16 mans. Like I saw him in a 12-man league this year a few times, and I scooped him up off waivers because I'm not slow. And I knew exactly what he was going to do. So yeah, he was a great contributor down the line, and people got a little impatient with him because he was still batting about 248 even through April, March, even though he put up 4 home runs, 17 ribs, and 2 stolen bases. Even the walks, only walked 20 times and 27 strikeouts, but that second month in May, especially in points leagues, is hurt you out. He was batting 250. He only had 5 walks on the season, on the month, for 24 strikeouts. And only had 3 home runs through that time. And the production was a little bad, and they were losing games. So I could totally see why people got a little anxious and was like, okay, I need to drop somebody. Screw it. It's not a bad team. But, they were stupid because, the next month he bounced back in June, batted 330, didn't really figure out the walk to strikeout issue, but was killing it. He had 6 home runs that month. He had 16 ribs, 7 runs. He was really doing it. And, 15 runs, 7 doubles and 2 triples. So he was having a really good month, and July was also fantastic. August kind of cooled off in the batting average category, but still was good. I think overall he had a good season. I think that he's a solid outfielder in a position that is really, not as sexy and not as deep as it's been in the past. So Brian Reynolds is somebody I really don't want to overlook for next year. And I think that, he's probably going to be a top 36 outfielder. I think probably closer to 30 to 33. I haven't done my rankings yet, but I think that's where he's going to end up landing for me. So Brian Reynolds, I think, is going to be great for 2025. Not super elite, but good amount of upside. Coming up next, we're going to break down Paul Skenes. What is my expectation for him next year? What to do with Mitch Keller, and kind of where does David Bednar actually fall in rankings next year, and what should our expectations be? Is he even going to have the job? We'll talk about that coming up next. Prize Picks is the best way to get in the action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with injury insurance policies, so your lineup stays in play. Even if one of your players gets injured, if your player leaves in the first half or doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Prize Picks is the best place to get your real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. It's fantastic. So use the promo code, sign up today, and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win the $50 bonus to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Promo code is Locked On MLB. It's in the little overlay below. Prize Picks is the best way to get in real money football, real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long with Prize Picks. Explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn about, and including your baseball city rivals. Make the time to taste test your baseball's competition. Stadium cuisine. Luckily, Booking.com can find you a stay at any stadium that's right just for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choices across the U.S., you can go completely incognito to all your baseball rival cities. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals team city. Booking.com. Booking.yeah. Are you watching Fox Sports ESPN on your TV all day? Have you turned down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or free on the Amazon Fire TV channel app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on Subtext, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. Get real-time alerts right to your phone, and on top of that, redraft rankings, dynasty rankings, sleepers, breakout, busts, injury actions, even ask us some questions, and a whole lot more. Stay ahead of your fantasy leagues by joining the Diamond Club on Subtext, where your path to victory begins. Subscribe now and elevate that fantasy baseball experience to new levels. And guys, you also get a free 2 weeks, so check us out. Off season's here. You're going to want to get your hands on our rankings. We're not really there yet, but you're in a dynasty league. It doesn't stop. You can make trades all season long. So all off season long. So you have a question. Should I make this move? Should I not make this move? Time to join the Diamond Club. Check us out. Links in the description below. All right, let's get back in this show. I'm excited. We got great names, and I'm really excited to talk about Paul Skenes. I think he's going to be fantastic. This kid is going to be ridiculous. I can't wait to see where I'm going to rank him. But after this little taste that we got of Paul Skenes, there's no way he's not a top 10 pitcher, in my opinion. It's maybe a little bullish, maybe a little overreactive, but here's the thing. Normally, when you see a pitcher come in and handle this many innings and have a sub-2 ERA, they're a different breed. Completely different breed. And not only that, did he follow a sub-2 ERA his rookie season? Not even his full season. Literally a half season. 170 strikeouts. A whip under 1. Okay? This kid is just built different. Fantastic player. Like Paul Skenes, and by all means, is going to be probably one of the best pitchers in baseball for a long time. And I won't be surprised if he's being picked as like SP1 or 2. I don't know if I'm going to have him that high just based off of, sophomore slumps. Honestly too, like innings limits. Well, I can't see where he threw 133 last year, but I don't know if he hits 200, which can limit the upside in production. Um, and you could possibly see him getting skip starts or not as many 2-start weeks, and that can kind of hurt you in volume aspects. And obviously, it just depends on how they're going to manage that, right? Like, is it the first half of the season? Is it the second half? The middle? We don't know. Or do they just give him a break at some point next year? So like, I don't think I'm going to give him the crown just yet, but I think next year is going to be telling. And I think, truthfully, I think until something happens to him, which knock on wood, I hope never happens, or until he shows us otherwise, after 2025, he will be the SP1 no matter who's healthy. It doesn't matter if Sandy Alcantara bounces back. It doesn't matter if Strider is himself. It doesn't matter if Woodruff or any other top tier pitcher bounces back. I think Paul Skenes is going to be number one. This is the last year to not get him as the SP1 or top 5 essentially. Because again, you're going to hear me talk about it. You're going to hear Dom talk about it. You're going to hear about everybody in the industry talking about how we don't foresee him hitting 200 innings, which is the difference between like him and a George Kirby, him and other players that are going to just, get, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess reps. He's not going to get as many reps, and the opportunity is just limited. So the floor is going to be still fantastic, but just not where the ceiling is going to be. But I think in his prime, we're looking at like, Scherzer prime, Kershaw prime, where they played full seasons. Guys that are just hit different. DeGrom levels, like he's going to be that fantastic. Hopefully, he's just better health than DeGrom. This kid's going to be fantastic. Verlander levels. Sorry, I don't mean to throw so many columns, but this kid is just so freaking good. I am such a fan. Like I can even I'm going to spend a bit on him. I'm sorry. Like you look at just like everything this kid did. Okay. Fastball movements, breaking ball movements, off-speed movements, all read on his baseball savant page. You probably see the glare in my glasses. This kid is ridiculous. Everything was elite. ERA, xERA was a little bit higher at a 2.5 ERA, which okay, sure, no problem. That's still elite as hell. X batting average, 1.95. Are you kidding me? Now, yes, the league is going to see him a little bit more next year, and he might have a month of adjustment, but I don't think he's even going to need that long. He's just different. Okay, fastball velocity at 96.8 miles an hour on an average, bro. What? Average exit velocity off his pitches, 87.8 miles an hour. So to have a red mark, just to bring it up, a red on Baseball Savant, you have to be at 89 miles an hour. That's what they consider red. Okay, he's nowhere near. He's giving guys blue on their page when they face him. Let's just put it in that way. Okay. He gets guys to chase 30% of the time. He gets whiff 28.7% of the time. He gets a strikeout 33% of the time. He barely walks dudes, only at 6.2% of the time. He barely lets anybody barrel against him at 5.2% of the time. Does not give hard hits that often. That's at 36% of the time, right? And that's not that much. And he producing ground balls 52.3% of the time. That is fantastic. So he can get you, not only can he strike you out, but he can also just make you have a hiccup and ground out, and boom, you're done. Paul Skenes is a whole nother level. I can't even stress this enough. Like I just look at this kid and I go, wow. Like he has an arsenal too. 4-seam fastball, sinker, curveball, sweeper, slider, changeup, 6 pitches. He, throws about 4 over 10% of the time. That sweeper's about 10. That curveball's about 10. Throws the sinker about like 28.4% of the time, and then leans on that fastball like crazy. But gets that put away at 26.7% of the time with the sinker. Curveball about 24% of the time. And then obviously that 4-seam fastball is just tearing everybody up at 98 miles an hour. Like, dude, this kid hits. And he does go over 100 too. Like, he is just a powerful behemoth of a man. Like, I love this kid. And he's built to last because of his size. You look at dudes like, Strider and other guys that have gotten TJ. Now, I'm not trying to jinx, anybody can get it. But the bigger dudes just tend to be able to handle the velo and the stress of their arm because they're just built bigger. They have more natural oomph because of the angle that they're in, height, like everything just makes him more physically inept to be good and last and have a long career. So Paul Skenes is going to be fantastic. Dynasty League startups, honestly, top 6 pick for me. He's going to be amazing. Write it down. All right. I know I spent a whole bunch of time, and I apologize. Coming up, like I promised before this last break, Mitch Keller, David Bednar, Jared Jones, Henry Davis, outlooks for next year. What are we doing? How are we handling it? That and more coming up next. Okay. Hey, NFL fans, you can get started this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page as you can place all of your bets. Speaking of which you might as well make that a $5 count to go with your $200 bonus and bonus bets. Guaranteed when you place that $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And guys, I got some bets to make that $5 bet count, right? So let's do this, right? Bet against the Giants all weekend long. I promise you, they're going to suck. I know last week they won. My bad advice, but I promise they will fail. And if you're feeling even more frisky, I don't know. Let's bet against Breece Hall. Unfortunately, dude can't get a rush for his life. So these are guys I'm betting against, and these guys that are going to make my $5 bet just that much better. So put them down, start them down, and make that bet count. FanDuel.com. All right, guys. Like I promised, right before the break, we're going to be talking about Mitch Keller, and he had a nice chunk of the season, right? I'm gonna bring up his splits, where like he was looking real good, and then he started to slow down, and he wasn't as efficient, and we'll start breaking that down. So let me just get to it real quick. Sorry, guys. Here we go. So first half, he had a 3.46 ERA through 19 starts. He had 114 innings. He had 105 strikeouts and a whip of 1.251. Now, the whip was a little high, of course. But this second half, 63 innings, he had a 5.65 ERA, completely, not even like Bonnie and Clyde off into the sun. It was more like we're going down in a blaze of glory. Everything's exploding. It almost looked like legit, like a war scene, like Dunkirk, of everything just blowing up around you. It was bad. He just sucked in that second half. And the only thing that was good was he was almost right under a K per 9, but like even the whip was at like a 1.4. So we got to look at like, okay, what are we going to do? What is our expectations? Because he did show some signs, but like, let's break down his season even month by month. April was fantastic. He had a what do you call it? Actually, it was ugly. I apologize. I was on the wrong thing. April was ugly at a 5.18. Nobody was looking at this kid. Then we go and we look at May. May was fantastic, a 1.3 ERA. June, 2.35 ERA. July, 3.60 ERA. But, those last 2 months, explosion, 6.75, 6.66. Might as well have the mark of the beast on that. Like, come on, man. Like, you sucked. And it just was bad. Like, I mean, I can't say it enough. And then you look at, like, the underlying stats, right? And this is where I'm going to tell you, don't even look at them next year, right? So fastball movement was, like, mediocre. No movement on his off speed or breaking balls. xERA was actually like a 4.31. Batting average was 2.51. Fastball velocity was nice at 94 miles an hour. Average exit velocity was 88.8, so right under where like guys have red on their baseball savant page. Wasn't getting guys to chase about 28% of the time, so right on the cusp. Whitman wasn't really doing that. Only 21.4% of the time. Was only getting strikeouts about 21.5% of the time. The only thing he was doing was not really walking guys, but I mean his whip was still exposed. So I don't really understand the walk percentage here. We're just going to jump over that. He was allowing guys to kind of barrel up about 7.2% of the time. Was giving up hard contact, though, at 39.3% of the time, and wasn't really creating ground balls to kind of, offset all the bad stuff. So for next year, I don't think we're going to be too excited to draft him. Honestly, I don't think he's going to have a good ADP. I don't think that we're going to be even considering him for next year. Like, get him out of your mind. If you want to throw like a dart throw at the end of the draft, yeah, sure, maybe. But like, yo, don't look his way. Done. Like, he's done. He's off my draft board. I'm done with him. So don't even sweat it. This is the part where I just tell you walk away. I know he had a good first half. No mas. Okay. Next guy here, David Bednar, their closer. Who is bad. So bad. He blew so many games this year. Like, it was ugly. And on top of that, the saves were down to 23 saves. We drafted him as a top 10 closer. I had all the hopes in him. He was one of my favorite targets this year. And he just couldn't do it. The only good thing he did was a K per 9, but I mean, that's great. I like him for the season before, where he had 67 innings and had 80 strikeouts, and he had 39 saves. The whole point we drafted him. He's only 29 years old too, but he completely fell off a cliff. And you start looking at like what broke down, what kind of failed. Well, fastball wasn't getting movement, breaking ball wasn't getting movement. Only his off-speed pitches kind of looked great, but like that's not good. Even though he's throwing 97.2 miles an hour on the reg, if it gets no movement and it's sitting flat, it's gonna get hit. His extra ERA was obviously a whole run better at 4.28, but still it's bad. He was getting up. His average exit velocity against him was 90.2 miles an hour. Yes, he was getting guys to chase and whiff, but he wasn't really striking them out. He wasn't taking advantage. He wasn't able to put them away. Walking guys way too much, allowing guys to barrel up, giving up hard contact 39.5% of the time and not producing ground balls. If the ground balls were higher and he wasn't walking guys much, I would feel a little bit better about next year, but I'm not. He now falls into like RP2 and like a low end, like a mid-tier RP2 because there's still a little bit of upside to possibly have a resurgence, but that's if the job is there for him next year. I don't know. I don't know if they bring somebody in, if they try to see what's going on, if it becomes a committee. I don't know. Like, I need to see more, and closers are already tricky. So, like, I'm not considering him a top 10 until I kind of really do a deeper dive or I start hearing some things from the team. But I'm not happy. Aroldis Chapman took away a lot. He lost his job at the end of the year. Like, I'm good. And, it's just bad. Look, and how I was talking about his fastball, like, even though he was throwing super fast, right? Like, it was hitting 97.2 miles an hour. It was still at a batting average of 256. That's terrible as a freaking closer. Just hopefully he can correct it because last year's fastball was getting hit at a batting average of at a 188. How do you allow that much of a difference in the next year? It's just, I hope there's a correction. I pray. I want to hear he worked on something. He did something to give me a little bit more confidence that I can get him to like RP1, but like 12. But other than that, he's probably looking more like RP 16 to 18 range. That's where I'm going to feel comfortable drafting him if we were drafting today for 2025. So David Bednar, completely right now, just like don't even look at him for RP1. And honestly, too, the team hopefully can get better itself. Otherwise, saves, we got to pray that we see that elite production and him being way more consistent and in his pitches so he doesn't give up games and blow them. So David Bednar, just forget about him for now. We'll revisit this. But guys, thank you so much. This has been a wild week. Being able to being in my own comfort zone of my home. But I hopefully have produced some good shows for you. And I can't wait to just be back in the studio with Dom. I'm really excited to just get back. The reels will be coming back. All the socials will be back next week when I am stateside. But guys, thank you so much. And I know you love us so much. So I want you to go check out my boy Sully at Locked On MLB. He'll be breaking down the playoffs all season long, something we don't do here. So check him out, Locked On MLB. So guys, please like, subscribe, comment, rate, review, do all those wonderful things for us because it really goes a long way and we really appreciate it. We have the best fans out there. We already know that. So guys, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.